All right. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Morning, Deborah from the UK. Good to see you. Good morning, everybody. Awesome. Good morning from California. Good morning from England. Good morning from Botswana. Good morning. We have folks from all over. Good morning, Vivian from Houston, Dublin, California. Good morning, everybody. My name is Carly. I'm the Events and Community Partnerships lead here at Learn It. And I have my colleague Marissa, who's our Events and Community Coordinator, as well as the lovely David Lieberman, who will be leading our session today on strategic goal setting to Supercharge 2021. So we're really excited for this last event of November as a way to kind of round out this month and as we get ready for the end of the year and going into a fresh year working on goal setting, and I'll let David talk more about that. But before that, I just wanted to say a quick note, just thanking you for being here. We love seeing you on Friday mornings. It's great to see some familiar faces, and I always like to just give a little sense of why Learn It is investing in community and why we believe in this group and doing these sessions. So we started doing sessions, these 45-minute sessions about a year ago as a way to kind of share the trainings that we do with our corporate clients on a more granular level and in a short little snippet, 45 minutes. And with the pandemic and just how this year has gone, we've been leaning on these a lot, and it's been great to see the engagement and just the membership in our community go up. So we really believe that you are helping shape the content we're developing and teaching every day. We're trying new things with these events, and we're testing a new community platform called Offsite, which I'll speak more at the end about. But I really want to drive home the point that we're really grateful for all of you for being here, for joining us on Fridays. We have a great calendar in November. And again, these are every Friday, 45 minutes. They're led by people like David, our internal experts, guest speakers, and we also partner with nonprofits. And to get just to our December calendar, we have a great lineup of events on performance reviews. So both from the management perspective of how do you deliver effective performance reviews. We break for an event on the 11th with one of our finance experts, Frank Abbott, on finance for non-financial managers. There'll be more on that event coming soon, and how to feel confident going into your performance review. So as an individual contributor, or if you're preparing for a performance review with your manager, how you can go into those conversations feeling prepared and confident. So with that, I want to keep this focused on the topic at hand, since there's a lot to cover. It's a meaty topic. So I'll kick it back over to David. But thank you so much again, all, for being here, and we really appreciate your time.
Morning, everybody. It's that time of year again, isn't it? Where it's time to set goals. You got to set goals, and everybody's about, hey, we need to get goals. I saw a inspirational T-shirt before that said, a goal without an action plan is just a wish. And so we all understand that goals are a little bit deeper than just setting them, right? Amelia Earhart said that, hey, you decide whether or not the goal is worth the risks, and if it is, stop worrying. Well, thank you, Amelia Earhart, right? And it's tough to just stop worrying, right? The more we know about what's real in the world of like an intellectual concept, the easier it is to make plans and just stop worrying. And so that's what we're diving into today. You know, at Learn It, what we're really concerned with mostly is what's real. Right. So we delve deeply into the jury journal studies. So we're talking about respectable studies published in respectable journals, trying to find out, okay, what does the science say? Not advice on a blog or, common knowledge or that sort of business. And then, okay, so based in truth, what can you actually do with it? And what's really interesting is that it's so incredibly interesting. And so we are going to dive into the science today, and then sort of pivot a little bit towards what you can do, right? Just so you know, the slide deck will be made available to you, right? We'll send you an email after the presentation with the slide deck and also with a link to the video. And so you don't have to memorize any of this. You might consider grabbing something to write with. Research shows that when we have an insight, those pops, that about half of that is gone in an hour. And if you write it down, it stays statistically an average of 3 to 4 times longer. All right, so if something pops for you, now's the time. Now's the time. Feel good? Okay, great. Now, these workshops work a little bit better if we have something in mind. While we give our workshops at Learn It, they're very hands-on. We do group work, we discuss, we do real work. We come out with moving forward more than we came in with, right? And so you might consider doing that today, right? So you might think of a goal or something that you want or a feeling that you'd like to have, that kind of thing. And so we can run it through our brains as we run some of the ideas through here as well, right? If we're going to start somewhere, a good place to start is like, well, okay, so what is goal setting, right? According to the American Psychological Association Dictionary of Lexicon, where they try to say this is what these terms mean so that people use the same terms in studies, they say it's the development of an action plan, right, designed to motivate and guide a person or a group towards a goal, right? So already we're starting to get the idea that it's more than just an I want, right? That if there's not an action plan there, if there's not a motivation element there, that it's not really, well, good luck with that, right? This whole goal setting idea hasn't been around for that long, really. If you're into the history of such things, and I know you are, right? In about 1935, an Englishman named Cecil Alec Mace, which is perhaps the most English name like on the face of earth ever, right? Started doing the first empirical studies around goal setting. He was a very interesting fellow. He was a conscientious objector in World War I. He said, I'm a pacifist, right? In World War I, there wasn't much of that going on in England, right? They actually threw him in prison where he did studies on prison life. And then when he came out, he delved deeply into goals. They said, oh, all is forgiven, cheerio. And he got a professorship. And he was the first person that said, hey, as far as the working person, people actually do want to work, that they're not lazy inherently. And what's also interesting is that money is not the major motivator. And I think we've all seen that be true, right? Now, as we move forward, modern goal setting theory, as it is, started in the late 60s, in 68, right, with Edwin A. Locke, which is also a very cool name. And Edwin Locke basically started measuring how the way you set goals is tied to the performance that comes out of that. And if you want to start with something real that you can grab onto right now, you have a goal in mind, yeah, something, right? Well, there's a 90% increase in performance when the goal is two things, right? So that means specific and ambitious. Specific basically means it's not, I want to make more money. It's, I want to make $7,000 more this year, or I want to make $1,000 more a month or something like that, like very specific. And the ambitious is it's a little bit of a stretch, a little bit of a stretch. So for yours, let's take your goal and let's make it specific, right? You're not committing right now. Let's just go through an exercise. So for you, can you make it specific? If your goal is to get healthy, are we talking like you feel 10% healthier? Is it about how far you can run? Right now, let's pump it up a little bit. Let's make it a little bit more ambitious. It's kind of interesting stuff, isn't it? Right. Now, as we start moving forward, you're like, yeah, goals, we all set them. How many of you said New Year's resolutions? Give me a yes really quick in the chat. Have you done that? Have you ever set a New Year's resolution? Some of us are like, I'm a humbuggy on that one, right? Okay, we're getting yes. So for the people that have put a yes, how many of you get those New Year's resolutions? You can give me a yes or a no or a maybe or a, kind of look the other way. No, never. There's a really fascinating study published in 2018 about New Year's resolutions. I guess scientists like to work on cool things every once in a while. And if you didn't achieve yours, well, then join the club because only 8% of people do. And 25% of people fail in the first week, right? You're like, forget it, I'm eating that sundae or whatever, right? And so as we delve into modern goal setting theory, let's look at what makes a goal more achievable. And it starts with the conception of the goal. Most of us, when we think about what's the goal we want, what we really think is about like, what do we want? Right? Maybe you say, I'm going to do 25 push-ups, or my goal is to make $8,000, or my goal is to feel better about myself, or something like that. And modern goal setting theory says that that's not really a goal, that a goal is not a real goal until it has three elements associated with it. So let's check out those three elements. Now, when we think about a goal, and we think about, I want $8,000, or I want to do 25 push-ups, or I want to get 8 new clients. The way modern goal setting theory is set up is they say that's not a goal at all, really. The goal is the why behind it, right? You want to do 25 push-ups? Why? Right? Is it because you want to get stronger? Is it because you want to be healthier? Is it because you want to feel better about yourself because you're about to turn 50 and you're like, I remember how strong I used to be, which may or may not be a thing that I'm personally associated with nowadays, right? So the goal is the why, right? I want to get my project management professional certification. Why, right? Because really getting that certification, I mean, you have it, right? Do you feel more successful? Did you get a raise? Are you feeling like you're moving forward in life? That's the real goal. For a second, let's stop, and for you, let's write 1 or 2 words about the why of the goal that you thought of. Like, why do you really want that? What are you really hoping to get out of it? Right? When we teach project management workshops, which by the way are amazing, we have one called Project Management for the Rest of Us. That's the very first question that really high-level project managers ask. So they say, oh, interesting. Well, what's the objective? Like, what are we really hoping to get? Because often everything else pivots towards that, doesn't it? The next question that project managers ask, which is nice because it's aligned to modern goal setting theory as well, is, well, okay, so what are you going to make or get or have in your little hand when you are all the way finished, right? What's the thing you're going to make or do that gets you that goal, right? So for example, that project management professional certification that we were talking about, that's the deliverable. That's the thing we get. And maybe advancement or feeling like we're growing, maybe that's our real goal behind the scenes. Now, this is important because the human condition generally focuses on the deliverable. We come up with a thing that we want in our head and we say, so I'm going to do 25 push-ups, and that becomes our goal when really it's not, right? Many of us have wanted to be happy, and so we're going to get out there and get a girlfriend or a boyfriend or something like that. And we get that girlfriend or boyfriend, and are we happy? Right? The deliverable doesn't always hit the goal, does it? Right? And then the third element of a goal in modern goal setting theory, if you're sitting down with your team or direct reports, you'll want to get all 3 of these. The third element is, okay, well, how? How are we going to go about getting it? Right? So the goal might really be to make, let's say, $50,000 more this year. The deliverable will be 4 new clients. The method will be, I will make 20 new sales calls every single day, right? That's how you'll get there, right? If the goal is to feel healthier, the deliverable might be, we lose 20 pounds, and the method is we go to the gym 3 times a week. Making sense? Okay, good. So if we're starting with a good base goal right there, what's going on up in our heads for us as human beings? There's some interesting stuff going on here. Let's delve deep into the science of goals. And if we're going to start with science, neuroscience is a pretty interesting place to start here. You know how sometimes you get excited about something and you're like, I'm feeling pumped up. I used to have a leader or manager who'd walk down the hall saying, let's get pumped up, right? Getting us to get that goal. Well, what's really interesting is that there's a good amount of science behind getting pumped up. A 2014 study published in the Journal of Motivation and Emotion, which is a real journal, showed that when goal setting on teams at work are both tricky but achievable. Okay, so it's tricky and achievable, right? It raises systolic blood pressure, right, which primes your body for action, and it increases zeal. Zeal is such a beautiful thing to get, right? So what's interesting is that tricky but achievable goals literally pump us up, right? That's what blood pressure is. We're getting pumped up, ready for action. Have you been there? Like you're like, oh, I don't know, that's tricky, but you think you can get it. Give me a yes if it feels like you get pumped up there in the chat. And some of us are thinking about it. Well, how about this? How about somebody puts a goal on you or you put a goal on yourself? And then, man, we're not really sure that we can achieve it. It kind of feels deflating, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like that deflating feeling? That's real too. Because when the goal is like, good luck with that, like we feel it's impossible, our systolic blood pressure actually goes down. So we're literally deflating there. Maybe the first place to start if you're setting goals for yourself or your team is that tricky but achievable, tricky but achievable. If you're taking notes, those are the important words to write down, tricky and achievable, right? And I remember back in the day, I have a friend, he was the 19th employee at PayPal, right? And back during the first internet bubble, he looked around and said, I'm out. He retired. He retired at 28. You can feel free to hate him. By the way, later he started getting very like weird feeling because he wasn't doing anything, and he went and started a farm. Now he's a farmer, which is cool, isn't it? He farms spirulina, which is it's a green sort of like vegetable that's paste that you spread on things, and it's delicious. So either way, when I first met him, he had retired a little bit before that, and he said, "Hey David, what's your 5-year plan?" And I was like, I think I was 26, and I was like, 5 years? I'm just hoping this year goes well. You know what I mean? Like when we're talking about like that big, long out there sort of plan, what's going on with that? Well, here's what's going on with that. Your brain can't do it. So what we're talking about is creative action brain. And if you're like, well, David, what part of our creative action brain are we talking about here? The medial prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that's responsible for long-term goals. I'm sorry, it's the part of your brain that's responsible for near-term action planning, right? So let's say that we're going to do something next week or today, and like, how are we going to do that? The middle of your prefrontal cortex is the part that figures it out. Well, here's what's interesting is that if the goal feels far away, your medial prefrontal cortex doesn't fire when you think about it. It does fire when you think about something this week or next week, you know what I mean? But not if it's further away. And so if you're like, in 10 years, I want to be here, and how am I going to do that? And it feels like your brain is just sort of blank. That's because literally your brain is just sort of blank, right? The planning part of your brain is not firing. And so here's a very interesting tool that you might consider. And again, you don't have to memorize this. We can build this with our teams or with ourselves for work. We'll give you the spreadsheet the slide deck. Gary Keller, who's the author, or who's a founder of Keller Williams Realty. He, a long time ago, when he first started, said, I want to build this massive real estate sort of empire. And he developed a methodology to get himself that. And what's cool about it is it plugs right into the idea of how our brains work with long-term goals. He called that tool, he called it the one thing. And the way it works is you say, okay, in someday, what's the big thing I want? You know, we're talking about big life things. Let me stop for a second, give you an opportunity to dream. What's the big thing? One day. Do you have something up there? It's okay to reach for the sky right now. So this is the way this tool works. What we're doing basically is working it all the way down to today by saying, okay, to get that someday thing, what do we need to have in 5 years to move us closer to that one day dream? How about in 1 year from now? What can we do in 1 year? If we're going to do that in a year, what can we do this month? If we're going to get that in a month, what do we do this week? And then all the way down to the goal of today. It's kind of interesting, right? It's encouraging because we've all been there where we're like, my brain just isn't doing it. Right? So let's move ourselves down to a place that our brain can do. In cognitive behavioral therapy, they call that the Zorro effect sometimes. I don't know if you know the story of Zorro. It's a revenge story, really, where Zorro's family was done a heinous wrong and he wanted to go out and get revenge. And so he hooked up with a master swordsman and said, teach me how to be a master swordsman so I can go kill all these people. And he said, look, here's what we're going to do. And he drew a little circle right around him. And he said, you're going to learn to fight in this circle. And then when he got a little bit better at that, they made a bigger circle, and now he's back and forth and moving around and dodging in a bigger circle until, sooner or later he's swinging from the chandeliers and going down drapes and whatnot, right? And so that's what we're really looking at here. It's the Zorro effect of that one day. And if you think that stuff is interesting, y'all heard about that whole visualize something and then it comes true idea, right? And it kind of feels like a little magic, or maybe like you are controlling your own universe, which, who knows, that might be true. And there's some really interesting neuroscience around it. All right, so what we're talking about here is the science of visualization. There is a system that runs through your brain. It starts near the top of your brainstem and then reaches out throughout most of your brain, called the reticular activating system. Reticular just means network. So it's a network that reaches through your brain. This system is basically responsible for conscious states, right? So it's the system that fires to control sleep, and then sleep while dreaming, and then consciousness, right? So people that have narcolepsy, what's really going on is there's a misfiring going on in the reticular activating system. Now, what's also interesting is it also functions as the filter for your brain. Right? You know how you learn a new word and then you see that word all over the place, or you get a new car and you're like, wow, there's a whole bunch of these cars I never noticed ever before, right? What's going on is the reticular activating system is firing when you see one of those cars. Right? And so then your brain goes, oh, and actually notices it. Now, what gets really neat here as far as getting goals is the reticular activating system can't tell the difference between visualization and something that really happens. Right? Maybe because it also deals with dreams. Like, they don't really know. What they do know is that if you visualize something happening, and so we're talking about seeing it like a movie, not just thinking about it, seeing it. If you visualize something happening, your brain treats it like that thing really happened. Right? If you work in finance, you get a whole bunch of finance stuff happening to you, and then you see lots of things that happen about finance. Well, what's fascinating is if you visualize the world of finance, you start seeing a whole bunch of that as well, right? So the methodology through it, if you like to take screenshots or if you love steps, and Learn It, we're very, very into what are the steps through it, right? It's not just ideas. So these are the steps. You think about, what experience or what result do you want? And then you play that like a movie in your head. It turns out that you can see it out of your own eyes. That works. You can see it in third person as well. There's a fascinating study they did with basketball players. If you want to go look it up, the basketball player visualization study, where they had a group of people do a whole bunch of free throws, like real ones. And then another group that did a bunch of visualization of free throws. They just saw it. They did it a lot. They both got better, as you might imagine, right? And the group that visualized got better just as much statistically as the people who actually did it, right? And they think it's that whole reticular activating system. It's pretty fascinating, isn't it? Right? So that whole thing of visualization, that's a little bit more real than some of us give it credence for. Hey, by the way, if you want to fall into a Wikipedia hole and you go look up the reticular activating system, you might be careful and take things with a grain of salt, right? Because people that are into the metaphysics of things looked at it and said, see, it's true. You can visualize and make things true. And that's not really what the science says. What the science says is that visualizing it allows you to see more of that. Now, of course, if you see more of that, you think more of that, and you have more opportunities pop up into your brain, right? Which is why they think that it affects goals. It's pretty fascinating, isn't it? Great. Tell you what, we've been going for a little bit. Why don't we reach out to Carly and see if there are any interesting questions that are popping up in the chat? Carly, any questions you can offer?
Yeah, thanks, David. We had a good one from Lars around kind of how do you adapt and try to fit external factors into your plan. So if you do have, a someday goal, and I mean, I feel like this year is a great example of that. How do you adapt to things you can't expect to be on to come up?
Yeah, I love that you said adapt, right? Because that's really what it is. We have a whole workshop about adaptability that is, you might imagine, very popular right now, as is all of the remote work workshops. And there are a couple of different ways to do it. The idea is that the goal is what you want, and then everything else is that adaptable part. One of the things that we use here at Learn It and that we bring in that adaptability workshop is a methodology developed by the Department of Defense, which you might assume that they're pretty big into adaptability because who knows what's going to happen. They also love to make up and then test methodologies that people can use right away and they can remember, right? That methodology basically looks like this. You say, okay, what do we know? What do we not know? And what are some ideas, right? So for example, 2020 threw us all for a loop. What do we still know? Hold on a minute. What do we not know? Let's get that into our brain so it's not like, the fear of the unknown, that's a real thing. So when we get it down, it's much easier to not be afraid of it. And then we can pivot to like, okay, so what can we do? Right? Really what we're looking at is a methodology to help us move forward instead of feel frozen. Nice, thank you.
Thanks, dude. We have one more good one that we can do. Okay, yeah. And actually, I've struggled with this too, Sophia. So I like this one a lot. Is it a good idea to share your movie with others? What about the negative comments? So how much should you be sharing your goals? Feedback on that.
Yeah. So we have a larger workshop about goal setting practices that's really designed for people to come in and set yearly or quarterly or even monthly goals for their jobs. And what's fascinating is that talking to other people about it is one of the most statistically significant things as far as when we set our goals. And we'll actually bring up some of that today, right? Of course, we will have to take a deep breath and put on our thick sweaters, right? Because there are always people who want to stop you, always, right? There are those naysayers, and hater is such a cool word, isn't it? Right? So as we're moving forward, at Learn It, we're really focused on the professional community. And what's interesting is that, the organization almost for sure has goals. There are studies that show that as far as managers go, that almost 60% of managers, 58% of managers have no idea about the big org goals. They're like, okay, right? And 80% of managers surveyed in a huge Harvard Business School survey, they talked to 7,600 managers. 80% of those people said they don't know enough. They want to know more. Right. So if you find that you're in that bucket where you might turn to your leaders and say, hey, I would love to align my goals or my team's goals to the organization's goals. Can you tell me more about the organization's goals? Well, then you're right there with 80% of people, right? So it's not weird for you. Let's take a second. And if we don't know, we can guess. And if we do know, let's write down on your paper one of your organization's goals. Right, in our goal setting workshops where we get super hands-on, we really love to make the goals as effective as possible, which does mean that, like helping the whole organization to get their goal. After we've got that, you're saying, okay, so what do you want to do? That's a little weird. And so instead, what we align to is brainstorming. Like we have all done brainstorming, yeah? Here, true or false? I kind of like true or false. True or false? Brainstorming is better with a group. What do you think? In the chat, give me a true or a false or a T or an F. Colleen pops up, talk about depends on the group. There's always like a depends person, right? This is one of those things that like everybody knows brainstorming is totally better with a group, except it's not. Like a fascinating study that changed brainstorming that came out in the European Journal of Social Psychology showed that very conclusively, brainstorming is better when we do it by ourselves first and then bring it to a group. And if there's only the choice of one or the other, it's better by yourself. They don't know why. Psychologists aren't that great at like pointing out why. They think it's because no matter how much we say there's no dumb ideas, we all know what social group dynamics are like, right? We all know that if a leader pops up with an idea, people tend to go, oh yeah, blah, 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 that one, right? So you might consider brainstorming with groups and then on individuals and then bringing it, which is the most successful way. Right? Or if you sit down and brainstorm on your own, a couple of minutes spent brainstorming is better than, no minutes spent brainstorming. In our project management classes, people like everything we bring, they're like, that's a good idea. And it's very clear. Thank you, learn it. I'm not doing it because who has 4 extra hours in the day to sit down and do that stuff? So we talk about in the beginning, 10 minutes is better than 0 minutes, isn't it? If you're brainstorming, one of the most valuable, and it's been around for a while and tested, is SWOT, right? Which is an acronym. The thing with SWOT is that the common knowledge about it is a little tweaked to where it's not always super helpful. So let's unveil this, what you might do with your team. Basically, the way that it works is you say, okay, here is the goal we'd like to align to, our organization's goal. Right? What are we going to do? And so you sit down and you say, okay, for our team or for me or our department, what are some strengths we might capitalize on? That's the essence SWOT, right? What are some weaknesses we might shore up? Right? I know you have no weaknesses. How about opportunities we might exploit? Right? So is that something going on in the landscape? Or threats we might mitigate? Now this is the important part, right? If you think of your strengths, you're like, yeah, what could we do to work with our org goals? You probably come up with a lot, and it's really inspirational, isn't it? And then you think of weaknesses and threats. Weaknesses, thinking about weaknesses stops you. It doesn't help you move forward. Thinking about threats makes you afraid. It doesn't help you move forward. Unless, of course, those are weaknesses you could shore up or threats you could mitigate. Yes? Right, mitigate. We're talking about like reduce the impact of the threat or reduce whether or not the threat even happens at all. Let's do this for you, right? Remember the goal that you're thinking of? We're just going to do 1 and 1 and 1 and 1. For you, let's write down one of your strengths. What are you really good at? If you want to think about your team instead, now's not the time to be humble. We won't have to put it into the chat. What are you good at? Where do you excel? What would other people say you're good at? All right, for you and your team, where's something you might get better at? Right, maybe it's something that doesn't go so well. All right, are there any opportunities sitting out there? You're like, oh, you know what? We might do something about that, or this has changed, or 2020 and work from home. When we're thinking about our org goal, are there any opportunities? Our brain's pretty good at that when we let it go. Okay, how about threats? So these are things that could go wrong. They're risks. They're, I hope that doesn't happen. That kind of stuff. By the way, if you're leading the brainstorming session, here are a couple of things about facilitating a brainstorming session with your team. First off, the person who's facilitating doesn't offer options. They don't say anything, right? They don't give any like suggestions or anything like that, because then all of a sudden the dynamic shifts and now you're the leader coming up with suggestions. You know what I mean? If you say, but I've got the best one ever, hold on to that. Consider the impact of your best thing ever coming out there. Here's what the facilitator does say. They say a lot of like, oh yeah, good, right? And then you write that down, right? So it doesn't mean it's a good suggestion. What you're praising is thank you for saying something. It's not exactly like good boy, like to a dog, and it's not exactly not that either. We're praising that someone said. And then the facilitator says an awful lot of like, okay, what else? What else? Good. What else? And then you let that awkward silence build, give people a chance to think. Therapists call it the silent prompt. They ask a question and they zip it, right, for longer than is comfortable. You'd be surprised. It starts going. It starts going. Good. So if we're coming up with ideas, the first idea is generally not the best one. Daniel Kahneman, who is the famous psychologist of the day, says our first idea is probably a bias. Like our brain just did that all by itself. You didn't really do that, right? Your second idea is usually an argument. And then the third idea is where real thought starts. So keep people going. We have design thinking workshops that are aimed at innovation. IDEO, who's a big design thinking organization, they design products. They came up with like the Palm Pilot and a couple of other things that changed the face of the world. They said that generally it's about 200 ideas before you come up with that like big one, right? So let's not hold ourselves or our teams back. And again, 10 minutes is better than 0 minutes, isn't it? Okay. Carly, any questions popping up that we might address?
Sorry, David, I got kicked out of the meeting for a moment, but
that's a modern problem.
Yeah, we had one question from Sophia just around clarifying the weakness part of SWOT. But
so weaknesses basically mean things that you or your team are not great at, right? So for example, let's say that, the first thing that popped in my head, let's say that I'm not super great at letting other people talk, right? Here I am talking for 45 minutes, right? And that's a weakness that I might shore up. So really what it is an opportunity for me to raise up something that I'm not so great at. Carly, is that the idea that you were aiming at? So questions like that might be questions to ask yourselves, might be like, okay, so what am I not strong at? Where have I struggled before? Right? What's going on that gets in the way of me doing a fantastic job, right? Me or my team? Where have we received valid criticism before? Right? Those are fantastic questions to ask yourself there. Good. So how about this one? Have you known people who are super goal focused? I mean, they're like really goal focused. And then those people, well, maybe they get a bit myopic and then they suffer for it, right? Their family suffers, their friends suffer, their social life suffers, their health suffers, their physical well-being suffers. Do you know who I'm talking about? Right? You can nod or give me a yes, or, okay, good. Because that's real as well. There's a fantastic study that you might go look up if that's your jam. By the way, in the slide decks, we'll reference the study. So if you need some go to sleep reading, then happy birthday to you. A study done at the Harvard MBA Business School that was really talking about, hey, Harvard folks, we can get ourselves into trouble with these. And they named the study Goals Gone Wild, which I thought was fantastic. Right? There's not very many funny study names. This was pretty controversial, right? Because you go to Harvard and then you start talking about, whoa, we need to pull back on our goals. That's not normal at all, right? And the study showed pretty specifically that goals that are too specific, that goals that are that has too much drive behind it, allows people to develop a super narrow focus, and then they fail to recognize the problems that pop up around that. Right. So we've seen big organizations make decisions that prioritize profit over safety. Right. If you were around back in the day when Ford got themselves in big trouble because basically Pintos were exploding. right? If they got hit from the rear of the Ford Pinto, and information came out that they knew about it, and they said, you know what, it'll be cheaper to defend the lawsuits than to fix the car, right? We've seen people focus on quantity over quality, more, or long-term goals go away because we've got a contest. More and more in modern goal setting theory, they say contest is not a great motivator because it kills long-term motivation, right? And then people who are super driven sometimes get into risky or unethical behavior, don't they? Right. So here's what we might do. Really quick in the chat, have you all heard of SMART, like SMART goals? Can you give me a yes or no or maybe, or we use it, or, you know, that kind of business, right? Lots of yes. Yeah. SMART is super useful. It's an acronym that's designed to build well-rounded goals. So we're going to get in here and take SMART to we're going to take SMART to the next level. We're going to get smarter on it. And when we talk about SMART, lots of little pieces of it are misunderstood. So you might keep your ears open for something that you're like, oh yeah, I didn't really get there. This is after we brainstorm, right? We come up with our org goals, or we ask questions about them. We brainstorm, we're like, oh, let's do this. And then we round out the goal with smarter. And here's how it works, right? The S in SMART is talking about like, okay, specifically, what do you want to do? Remember, the more specific that we can get, performance goes up 90%. Now, this is a big one. The M in SMART means how are you going to measure success, right? If what we want is more people who can connect their audio settings when we do remote workshops like this, how are we going to measure that? Because most of the time it's not measured at all, right? You're like, well, I feel healthier. Are you healthier? Right. So how do you measure healthy? How do you measure motivation? How do you measure happy? Any ideas? It's rough, isn't it? Here's what psychologists do. Researchers. If they can't figure out how to measure it, they create a survey. That's it, right? So they make a survey and then they measure the survey. Now, there are two important things here. One is that you have a way to measure your goal. At the end of the year, when you're standing in front of the board of directors doing your amazing presentation, and you say, well, it feels good and people like it, that's not super high level, right? The other is to have a win measurement, right? So for example, at Learn It, we are building a community site where you come in and talk about fascinating things like this, and the facilitators are all involved. It's called Offsite by Learn It at offsitebylearnit.com commercial, right? And so we have it. Is it successful? Well, so what we might measure is how many people get in there. We might measure the amount of touch that's going on. How much do people contribute? How often do people say that this is awesome? Right? These are all things that we're looking at. And without a win measurement where we win. At the end of the year, Carly, who is running that, by the way, you all met Carly, will be able to stand up and say, without a doubt, it was successful. Let's not let our success be measured by somebody's mood that day, right? So if we move forward there, actions is what are we going to specifically do? Hey, hold on a minute. Let's back up, because is this even realistic here? Right? Realism is interesting because if you're sitting down with your boss, you're like, is this realistic? Like, that's not always even a realistic question to ask about, right? And so realism doesn't really mean like sarcastic, like, are we in the real world with this here? When we're talking about realism, what we're really talking about are the 3 points of the iron triangle. The iron triangle is a methodology that we bring up in some of our workshops about checking to make sure that our task load is realistic. And what it really means is, with what's being asked to happen and the amount of time that we have to put into it, right, versus the amount of time that it actually takes to do it, is that realistic? Right, at the end of the year, if you make new goals for your people on your team and they're already 100% busy, it's not super realistic that we'll get that goal with the amount of time that we have to put in. So if you're working with leaders and you want to ask questions about realism, instead of saying, is that realistic? We say, hey, with what you're asking for and the amount of time that it takes to do and the amount of time that we have available, is that realistic to put into this? Making the sense? Neat, isn't it? All right, let's round out smart. We said we're going to get smarter, so this one's really interesting. Human beings, time is so weird. In the beginning of our time management workshops, oh, and by the way, what a fantastic professional skill. To get good at time management, you get so much more done, and it's so relaxing, so relaxing. We explore like what's even going on with time, and time is weird for human beings. Without a deadline, people are like, la, la, la. You know what I mean? It's not even real. The thing is, deadlines are scary. I mean, they have the word dead in them. You know what, right? So what's more achievable is a timeline, right? Timelines are about mini check-ins and about dates and what's coming up. Earlier, we talked a little bit about goal setting statements, and the number one thing about whether or not you achieve your goal is whether or not you meet with someone on the regular to talk about how progress you've made. By the way, goal setting experts say the best person to meet with is not someone like who's your direct leader. You're talking about somebody who's a peer. All right. Officially, those people are called accountability partners. I don't love those terms. It feels kind of accountability partner. It feels a little weird. I prefer success partner. Right? Yeah. And so what we're looking at is, let's set a timeline for this goal. Now, when we get a little bit deeper into it, when we start talking about smarter, here's where it gets neat. For goal setting statements, when we say, okay, I want this by this day, we've already set a timeline. Harvard did a really interesting study where they're talking about the ways people verbalize their goals. And it turns out that the most statistically significant part of the verbalization is not like saying what you want or even saying when you want it. It's saying why it emotionally matters to you. Right? If I say, by Friday at 4 o'clock, I will have a clean desk because I want my coworkers to respect me. Whoa, right? That hits way harder, doesn't it? Right? If you say, by next year in January, I will have my project management professional certification because I want to feel like I'm growing as an individual. Whoa. You know, at home, I talk about this stuff. I'm nerdly into it. And I say things to my wife. I'm like, oh, I kind of want to do this. And she's like, well, why does that matter to you, David? I'm like, because she got me now. She got me, right? That emotion part really matters, doesn't it? Let's take a second and remember your goal, the one that you were thinking about before. Emotionally, why does that matter to you? Not the organization, right? To you. Are you ready to admit that and put that out there? It feels much stronger, doesn't it? Right. So to round out smarter, let's look at the last part. We look at everything we just did and we say, hold on a second. How do we avoid the pitfalls of a narrow focus? Right. That goal's gone wild thing. And that's real. So a goal that in 6 months, I'll do this. You might say, maybe a year. Right? Maybe I'll baby step it. Maybe I won't work an hour every day on it. That sort of business. Right? What we're trying to do is peel back so that you get the goal and your whole life doesn't suffer. It's pretty interesting, isn't it? Carly, any last questions popping up?
Yeah, I like this. So your life doesn't suck, David. That's a good,
good
motivation.
I said suffer.
Okay, I thought you said,
was a very interesting
so your life
thing.
Doesn't suck. To suffer, that makes sense. We did have a good kind of comment from Lars. He says, one of the things I've discussed with a lot of experienced friends is, should we start with where we want to be, or should we start with where we want to get, where we are? So should we start with where we want to be, or should we start with where we are to get to our goal? Or is it kind of a mix of both? Any comments?
So the actual goal setting part is where do we want to be? It's why do we want this? You know, what really matters to us? What am I going to get? And then there's the how am I going to get there part, right? What we might look at is in the beginning, we talked about goal setting theory and how modern goal setting theory says that every goal needs the actual why, the deliverable, what we're going to get, and then the method. The method is how we get there, right? In our longer goal setting workshops, we kind of pull like the greatest hits of making a thing happen. So in that case, we're talking about planning. Really, the answer is kind of both. Both matters. It's neat, isn't it? Right. So what we're looking at as important is that every goal needs to have three parts: the why you want it, the what we're going to make, and the how we're going to get there. That the idea of like near-term goals that are challenging but doable, that's what gets you pumped up, right? That when we think about in 5 years, I want this, then we don't think about it because our brain can't think about that. So moving it closer really matters. If you'll sit around and visualize, what an amazing thing. And by the way, it feels great too. When we're setting goals, if we first align to the organization's goals, now that's teamwork, isn't it? Right. And that's also a good way to get promoted. And instead of just pulling the first one out, why don't we brainstorm? SWOT, or a different brainstorming methodology, has clinically been shown to work very well. And it works best if we do it on our own and then we come back. Instead of just the idea, if we round it out with some tool like SMART or SMARTer, now we're there. And let's not forget that it emotionally as human beings, that's a huge driver to us, huge. It's pretty interesting stuff, isn't it? If you've got questions about how Learn It works or what we offer, that sort of business, Carly will take that on for you. And otherwise, thanks so much for joining us. We do one of these pretty much every week, and free is pretty awesome, isn't it? All right, so please feel free to join us in the future for Learn It. My name is David Lieberman. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, David. That was really great. Thank you. We have a lot of gratitude coming through the chat. So thanks so much, everybody, for being here. We do have a couple of opportunities for you to stay engaged with Learn It. And so I will go ahead and share that really quick before we wrap up. We have some great sessions coming up again for December. And so would love to see you all on December 4th, December 11th. We're taking next week off for Thanksgiving. So we see you after the holiday. I hope you all have a lovely Thanksgiving holiday. And we also have offsite. And before I go there, I also wanted to say that if you want to dive deeper, David mentioned some of our project management workshops, which is kind of a nice stepping stone to goal setting. I actually like to think a lot about my goals in terms of actual projects and using some of the project management methodology. So when you join Offsite, there's a 15% off code in Offsite to join that course that's coming up. I believe the first week of September, first or second week of December. So there's a discount code to enroll in that workshop as well. And David has actually developed that class and may be teaching it, so you may get to see him again as well. And lastly, just another push for Offsite. Again, we're developing this platform. You as our community members really are our beta testers, but we have our team of instructors in there posting on a regular basis. We're going to be focusing on monthly themes going into the new year ahead. And so we're going to be using Offsite as a way to build habits and work on our goals together for this next year, both internally for Learn It and also for our community. We'll work together on our personal and professional goals in there. So with that, I will close with a quick video, as if you haven't seen enough of my face, but we're going to close with a quick video on Offsite. So give me 1 second here, and I am going to share our video with sound to close it out. And if you have any questions in the meantime, as this video is playing, please feel free to put those in the chat, and we can capture those for after the session.
Hello, and welcome to Offsite by Learn It. I'm Carly, Community Lead. Offsite is a new online community dedicated to fostering the principles, skills, and connections needed to thrive in the new normal. It's a place you can go to reconnect with your professional goals and aspirations and find answers by collaborating with a group of intelligent people from all over the world. And now, more than ever, with the crisis affecting everyone in some way, we are all looking for safe, inclusive spaces to connect with each other, to learn new things about the topics that matter most, and to grow together personally and professionally. So whether you are working on your own personal growth, working with technology, working with others, or leading people in teams, Offsite can help. Offsite is organized by topic. So if you're looking for career advice, insights on business, free workshops, or a good book on leadership, it's all on Offsite. And in the spirit of community, we are looking to you to help us shape this platform. We encourage you to engage with your peers and instructors, share your thoughts, and ask questions. The more you put into it, the more you get out of it. We are so excited to be launching this online community, and we can't wait to see you here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. I really appreciate your time and attention. David and I will stick around for another 5 minutes or so. Also, the recording for this session will be available in Offsite and as well as the slides. So that's where you can find all of your resources for after this session. Those will no longer be emailed. They'll be in Offsite just to keep us organized. And you can access the recording of the session right after this. It'll be uploaded in there. So thank you so much, everybody. I'll put the URL again for Offsite in the chat. If you have questions, my colleague Marissa is also capturing those. So we'll get to those as much as we can and post them in Offsite, post the questions, the answers to those in Offsite as well. So thank you so much.
Harley, why don't we open it up to open questions and see if anyone has questions about Learn It that we might help with. There were a couple in the chat and out loud
Perfect.
as well. So it's your time. If you have a question, why don't you write, I have a question in the chat, and then we'll address them in the order that they pop in. You're quick with the typing fingers. Shalana, you're quick on the draw. How can we help?
Okay, I think I'm off of mute. Can you hear me?
I can barely hear you.
Oh, you can barely hear me. I'm sorry. I don't know.
No, now you're good.
Okay, good. Harley, I love the marketing video. And so I thought, is there a class at Learn It that we learn how to make a good marketing video like that? And, because you don't even look like you're reading a script. So I feel like I've been struggling to do that, but not look like I'm reading a piece of paper in front of the camera.
Oh, well, thank you, Shalana. I'm happy you enjoyed the video. I must say we have a good team of internal editors and a good, our head of marketing is great. So he was coaching me through it the whole time. But I'm trying to think, yeah, we have a great video editor that honestly did that, but we also, anyways, internal editing. But David, go ahead, because you might be able to speak more to classes we teach on that.
So Shalana, the first answer is yes, is the answer, right? At Learn It, we do a ton of customized workshops that we don't really offer on our site because we can't put 18,000 things on the site. And things like teaching and creating marketing videos and lots and lots of stuff we're absolutely available to do. Generally, those happen as private workshops, right? So if you get you and 3 other people from your organization who are into it, we can book a private workshop for you that's actually less expensive than sending 3 or 4 people to a class and customize it to your needs. Is that the sort of thing that you're asking about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I work for a company. I work for a company, but I also own my own business. So yeah. And so, I'm doing this Black Business Expo where we're going to be, submitting our webinars. And I've been the last person to submit her video as of late, because I feel like I don't want to submit something that people are going to see and it's not edited and it's not succinct and it looks like me talking at home. And I don't want to send that in.
Yeah, I can feel you. A couple of things that might be helpful for you if you'd like high level tips.
Yeah, absolutely.
A script is generally not as useful as an outline, right? So as long as you're semi-familiar with your talking points and you have an outline to remind you while you're talking, then it comes out in a more natural way. Do you see how like Carly really felt like she was really saying it, not reading it? Right, it's because she was, right? So you can put the outline on the screen right next to your camera, or if you're using a higher end camera like we do for those videos, there are apps you can get for like iPads or other panels like that are basically their screen teleprompters.
Ah, got it.
Right, so that might be helpful for you.
Teleprompter. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're very welcome. What other questions can we answer?
And Shalana, really quick, I had a really big, I wrote each sentence out on a really big, like almost canvas, and wrote it over and over again, and then kind of ingrained it. And then if it's something you believe in, it's a little bit easier to kind of then just say. So I wrote it physically in front of me, and just, little anecdote there, but I'm a visual person, and the writing it and seeing it on a large piece of paper, and then I would put that up for the first film, and then I would put it down and we'd refilm it, just so then I could say it in a more like authentic way. So I don't know if that helps. We also have courses on public speaking, so I'm happy to share that with you. If it's more on the, how do you get comfortable and confident speaking, we can share more on that as well. But
awesome. No, that was really good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. All right, Carly, looks like anyone else have any questions that we can address? We're here to be helpful.
I think, Marissa, unless I missed any, I think that's all I'm seeing for right now. So thank you, David. Really appreciate it. And again, please reach out to us with questions. You can chat us in Offsite, or you can email me directly as well. So thank you. Thanks, David. Thank you for sticking around as well and saving time for questions.
You're welcome.
Marissa,
Bye,
do we have
everybody.
any? All right, take care.
No, I kept track of them. That was all of them.